Us who are in the Kimberley process, here and there we might see some production statistics, but the generality of the people do not have adequate information on production from Marange. Then the other thing is there is need for cooperation between law enforcement agents and custom officials. That is quite key. We have porous borders. I'm sure you have heard of smuggling of diamonds into Mozambique, into South Africa, and other areas. The question is whether there is adequate cooperation between law enforcement agents, whether it's the minerals unit, whether the custom officials, and other border security organs. So that one is an issue that we should be looking at closely in terms of smuggling of diamonds. The other aspect in terms of minimum requirements of the Kimberley process is that names of people who have been involved in laundering of diamonds or smuggling diamonds, or who have been convicted of theft of diamonds, should be published and shared amongst Kimberley process members. This is something that we should be looking at in terms of Zimbabwe's compliance with the Kimberley process certification scheme. The other aspect is that all diamond mining companies and any person who is involved in mining or even transportation of diamonds or dealing in diamonds is supposed to be registered. The question in Zimbabwe is we have seen a lot of artisanal miners or informal miners or magweja, as they are called, going into Marange without any license, any permit to do that. So if we continue having those kind of cases, it means the country may not be compliant with one of the key requirements of the Kimberley process certification, which is registration and licensing of all people, whether it's individuals or companies that are involved in mining diamonds, as well as trading diamonds. So it's important to look at that. Then the other requirement of the Kimberley process, in terms of illicit financial flows, the fact that cash purchases of rough diamonds are supposed to be done through official banking systems. So the Kimberley process is very particular on that. That cash purchases should be done through the bank. This is important for verification. This is important for ensuring that there is adequate documentation and traceability. So what we have seen with our experience in the KP, there was a time when the Zimbabwean delegations to the Kimberley process would resist this aspect of making sure that their cash transactions are done through the bank accounts. The reason being, there was a belief that because we are under sanctions, so we should not be able to transact through the banking system. So that to us is an issue of concern because it might give rise to issues of illicit financial flows. Another aspect that is important in terms of Kimberley process is that licensing documents should also be made available, and that courier companies, dealers, and so forth and so on should be registered. So that's about the minimum requirements. I thought I should give you this because they are very important in assessing whether Zimbabwe is compliant, one, with issues of illicit financial flows, two, with registration of all mining companies, three, with the need to make sure that the country benefits from the mineral resources. Now, talk about the issue of joint ventures. When diamond mining, the official diamond activities started, the deals or contracts that were signed were not made public. So we just said there's BADA, there's Anjin, there's this company, and so forth and so on, without the people of Zimbabwe knowing exactly under what terms and conditions were these companies operating in Marange. Yet that is quite important, because if you don't disclose certain information, which is not of a proprietary nature or commercial value, sometimes people start speculating. Yet we are talking of a democratic society, we talk about transparency and accountability. So in Marange, we have had situations where secretive deals were struck, and the issue of failure by state entities to carry out due diligence on investors. I think this has been pointed by the Mines and Energy Committee in previous reports. So failure to disclose contracts and revenues is an issue that we have identified as a key threat. So as I'm going through this, I'll also be making recommendations wherever possible. So one of the recommendations there in terms of revenues, transparency and accountability is the need for Parliament to be able to access contracts, to monitor contracts, to review contracts, and wherever possible, recommend the renegotiation of contracts in cases where they do not benefit the people. Let me talk about the second aspect, which is illegal digging, illegal trade and smuggling of diamonds again. Diamonds are susceptible to smuggling because they are a store of value, they are easy to conceal. So they are susceptible to smuggling. So it is important to know that value or that factor of diamonds. So you find that in Marange we've had cases of syndicates involving diggers, dealers, police and the military. We've documented those kind of cases, and we've observed those kind of situations playing out in Marange. And at the moment, there's also ongoing illicit activities in Marange. Diamonds are coming out of Marange as well. So what it means is there is inadequate security. And if there is inadequate security, it means there is non-compliance with the KP minimum requirements in terms of security in Marange. So it's important to look at that. It also means that there isn't enough cooperation between the law enforcement agents and the customs at the border posts, because diamonds are also going into Mozambique, South Africa, and other transit countries, if you talk of Kenya, and ultimately maybe to Dubai, China, and other destinations. So it's important to look at that. Let me go on to the consolidation and establishment of the Zimbabwe Consolidated Diamond Company. When it started, Zimbabwe was not very clear whether it wanted to consolidate companies or it wanted to consolidate diamond mining sites. So it wasn't very clear, and even from reports of the previous reports by the committee, it wasn't very clear on what exactly government wanted to do. Was it a consolidation of diamond mining sites that DMC and Marange Resources will become one, and then there is some operational mechanism to make sure that there is sharing of profits or whatever? It wasn't very clear. So government was not very clear on that. But ZCDC, as you all are aware, was registered as a private company in terms of the Companies Act. And however, we were saying, in terms of best practice, it would have been better maybe to have established this company. It's a big company through a statutory, through an act of parliament. It's possible, so that at least we avoid this issue of a private company that tries to avoid scrutiny, maybe from parliament or from the public. So it is important that we look at that issue. But there's nothing that can stop a public company registering a subsidiary as a private company. But in terms of making sure that at least we stick to constitutional principles of transparency and accountability, financial probity, it would have been better to make sure that ZCDC has systems that ensures transparency and accountability than registering it as a private company, which may be shielded from public scrutiny. The other thing that is important for us to talk about is the Finance Bill 2018. I'm sure the diamond mining sector as well as the platinum mining sector is not subject to the indigenization program. For us, it offers an opportunity to attract responsible investors or people with money who can, whether it's local people or foreign companies. That aspect is important because if we look at the way De Beers is operating in Botswana, a partnership between De Beers and the Botswana government, in Namibia as well. So those kind of joint ventures are important in the diamond mining sector, rather than ZCDC alone. And yet, it's a subsidiary of ZMDC, which have had a lot of problems and challenges as well. Then the issue of marketing of diamonds. We have observed and reports by our partner organizations have noted undervaluation of diamonds. And even the Committee on Mines as well revealed this. The issue of undervaluation of diamonds, for example, by Dubai, by 40%. It's an issue of concern. Then illicit financial flows. The former president indicated the issue of the missing 15 billion. But what is important is whether that figure was verified or not. I haven't heard any suggestion to make that it was verified. So it's important as well to dig deeper into those kind of figures. But we understand in 2016, the Minister of Mines tried to do an audit of Bada Jinan, but they refused, and even Anjin as well, they refused an audit, which shows that there's need to look into what exactly transpired. Then, following the formation of ZCDC as well, I'm sure you are aware that the RBZ is now involved, maybe based on the loans that it has given to ZCDC, that it is involved in the marketing and selling of diamonds. Has this rendered MMCZ useless? Because MMCZ has the sole mandate to market and sell diamonds. We have to look at that issue. What is the current status in terms of the selling of diamonds, whether it's through the auction system? And also even the auction system itself, it should be subjected to public scrutiny and parliamentary scrutiny. So the auction system is important to look at and see if Zimbabwe is getting value and is dealing with the right people. Remember, the Kimberley process requires participants to make sure that they take note of people who have previously been convicted of illicit trade in diamonds. Are they not the ones who are involved in buying our diamonds? If they are, it means we are not compliant with the Kimberley process certification scheme. I'm just suggesting it's important to look at those kind of things. If you are aware as well in terms of audit of diamonds, in 2010, there was an audit which was carried out by Ernst & Young on diamonds that were confiscated by the police. That was in 2010. But the audit by Ernst & Young did not give an indication of what happened to those diamonds that were confiscated. That was in 2010 by the police when they were doing the raids in Marange and others that were related to criminal activities around illegal possession of diamonds. So that report in 2010 did not indicate what happened to those diamonds. The other issue I want to raise as well is that in Zimbabwe at the moment, there is not what we call a single point of truth in terms of statistics. When we talk about a single point of truth, we are talking about making sure that if you go to Zimra, if you go to Zimstat, if you go to Ministry of Mines, and if you go to the Kimberley process, you will see similar figures in terms of diamond production, in terms of revenues, and in terms of the numbers of operators in Marange or any other area. But our analysis at one point indicated that the figures that we got from the Kimberley process in terms of aggregated figures around production in Marange, as well as those that were held by Zimstat, were not tallying, were not matching, which shows that there's misnomer there. So as an organization, we did some research on that. The other thing that is important is to note that figures in Marange were just banded about, and then we heard sometimes that Zimbabwe has potential to supply between 20 to 30% of diamond production, worth over 2 billion per year. And that was said by the former Minister of Mines, Bof. But where did he get those kind of figures? Have we done any exploration adequate enough to give us an indication that as a country, this is what we are worth? And are we able to negotiate contracts that would give us value in terms of the diamonds we have in Marange? So we have to, that is the reason why I'm saying in Zimbabwe, we do not have a single point of truth, which is a reference point, whether it's on a website, where one can go and see information on maybe the deposits that we have, maybe the potential revenue, and so forth and so on. So people tend to speculate. So you have these different figures being banded around. So it's important to have one single point of truth in terms of diamond production, revenues, and so forth and so on. So the recommendation there is that the public disclosure system is important on mineral revenues along the lines of the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, which tries to make sure that figures related to production, revenues, as well as contracts are known. Then I should also talk about the need to make sure that the constitutional principles are adhered to, whether it's diamond mining or any other mining related activity. These include financial probity, making sure that there is adequate corporate governance, transparency and accountability in the way public officials conduct their duties. It is important to ensure that there is access to mine level data on diamond production, but in Marange we did not see enough of that. Then the other issue related to that is that we need to know the beneficial ownership of some of the companies. Who exactly benefits in the end in terms of profit from the diamonds that we have? Is it locals who went to South Africa, Mauritius to form companies and come back as foreign investors? We need to understand that kind of arrangement, if that is what is happening, so that at least we know who exactly is benefiting from the diamonds. So the issue of beneficial ownership was not very clear from the situation in Marange. People would start speculating as to who owns what in Marange. So if we have a law that provides for beneficial ownership disclosure, this will be good. Use of revenue from Marange. It is important, and we have noted that the communities in Marange did not benefit.
So I just want to check how much more time do you have?
Mr. Chair, if you can give me 15 minutes or 10 minutes, I'm sure. Maybe between 10 and 15 minutes. I should be
able to summarize and pick on the key points as we move on.
Okay.
It is quite a good report, just that I look at the time.
Thank you. So, use of revenues. There's nothing to show that there were diamonds or there are diamonds in Marange. Nothing. There's no tarred road. Clinics are in a poor state. Schools are in a poor state, and so forth and so on. So it's important to look at that. What is also outstanding is exploration, as I've indicated. Legal reforms in the diamond mining sector. What we observed is that there is inadequate legal frameworks on diamond production, marketing, as well as trade of diamonds. So that is the reason why we have been calling for a Diamond Act that would ensure that we investigate who are the applicants for particular mining licenses, and we also do background checks. There has been confusion as to what exactly government wants to do in Marange. They were not sure whether they should come up with a Diamond Act, whether they should amend the Precious Stones Trade Act, or whether they should amend the Mines and Minerals Act, and so forth and so on. But the recommendation there is that we need to talk about the Diamond Act so that we have a comprehensive piece of legislation. Sovereign Wealth Fund Act. I'm sure the committee will be also interested to look at the issue of the establishment of the Sovereign Wealth Fund Act. The body has been established and the act was passed because part of diamond monies are supposed to go towards the Sovereign Wealth Act, which is a future fund. Then the Mines and Minerals Bill, there's need to make sure that we include provisions of public disclosure so that the diamond mining companies are accountable. Then compliance with the Kimberley Process Certification Scheme. Since we said Zimbabwe is a member of the Kimberley Process, and following the consolidation, we have not seen any effort by government to institute an internal audit system that would identify whether the country is still compliant with the KP minimum requirement. And that is a must, because we want to make sure that Zimbabwe continues complying with the Kimberley Process certification scheme. So we are suggesting that there is need for Zimbabwe to invite a Kimberley Process review mission to assess the situation in Marange, to see if the country is still compliant with KP minimum requirements. And that review mission is important since it's a requirement of the Kimberley Process that after every 3 years, a country should invite a KP mission. Then the other issue that is important for civil society is the need for government to make sure that there is joint monitoring on what's happening in Marange. This includes involvement of parliament, involvement of civil society, and involvement of the mining companies and government to generate reports and understand the situation in Marange and make sure that at least there is transparency and accountability and there is compliance with the Kimberley Process. The other threat, Mr. Chairman, in terms of Zimbabwe's trade and production of diamonds is synthetic diamonds. Synthetic diamonds are called lab-grown diamonds. It is important to know that there are countries that are developing or companies that are developing lab-grown diamonds. And millennials, or the youth of these people, or these what we call millennials, are quite excited about lab-grown diamonds because they come with environmental protection tag, human rights compliance, and that they are clean. Yet Zimbabwe is saying we have a lot of diamonds that are underground that we have not yet mined. So if synthetic diamonds are coming up and will take the market, it means that Zimbabwe would not benefit anything. So the recommendation there is that Zimbabwe should support calls for reforming the Kimberley Process in terms of making sure that we redefine what is meant by conflict diamonds, so that cases of violence and human rights violations are tackled. I think I will have to stop there, Mr. Chairman, and I will be open to questions. Apologies for the rather long presentation. Thank you very much.
No, it was not long. It was very informative indeed. And we really appreciate that. It was very informative, and it does help us ask a number of questions when we then meet the next one. Mr. Maguwu, it's your turn now.
Okay. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. And I want to applaud this committee for showing interest in probing deeper into the Marange diamond scandal. And I think that's how nations are built. When the leadership shows interest to account for every penny, that's how great societies the world over have been built. So I struggled a bit to say, where do I start? And I hope I'm not intimidating you, threatening with another long presentation, longer than Shamiso's, but I'll summarize what I want to say here. But I thought I should give a brief background to the looting that took place in Marange, that the scandal did not start in 2009. The Marange diamond scandal must be traced back to 1993, when De Beers acquired an exclusive prospecting order for Marange. Not that they wanted to explore anything. They had been there before. They knew what was in the ground. De Beers illegally extended its EPO against the laws of this country beyond 1999. Section 94 of the Mines and Minerals Act is very clear on the length of exploration in this country. It says no order shall be granted for a period in excess of 3 years, but an order may be extended by the minister on the recommendation of the board for a further period or periods not exceeding 3 years in all. And this means after the initial 3 years, an order can be extended maybe for 6 months, another 6 months, but these extensions must not exceed 3 years. It means any company that does exploration for a period beyond 6 years is violating the law. But De Beers did exploration for 13 years, from 1993 to 2006, and that was criminal. During this time, De Beers was not exploring, they were mining. A processing plant was set up at Basil Bridge by De Beers in a business compound owned by one Mr. Nyamanindi, where they began processing diamonds. They would take the ore from Marange, where Mbada Diamonds ended up mining, to Basil Bridge, where they did the processing. And some of the diamonds were exported through Bay Bridge using vehicles of Fawcett Security Company. Was the government not aware of this scandal? They were aware. Villagers in Marange inquired from the minister. Then there was Honorable Amos Mizi, that we are seeing suspicious happenings at night. That's when the processing took place at Basil Bridge. The minister told the villagers that De Beers is doing exploration for fertilizer manufacturing. After that, some honorable members of parliament then began to push for an investigation into De Beers' workings in Marange. It is at that point that De Beers decided not to renew its EPO in 2006. But even then, the then Minister of Mines was actually fighting in De Beers' corner that he is only going to give the license to anyone else in the event that De Beers does not submit an application for renewal. That shows to a very incestuous relationship between the government and De Beers. The period 2006 to 2008 saw the number of artisanal miners growing from about 100 to over 30,000 by November 2008. After that, that's when the military intervened, and my colleague has already touched on what happened when the mining companies were formed in 2009. What shocked me, Mr. Chair, is that government went on to engage criminals from the Middle East, were brought into this country, were given licenses to mine in Marange. I am of the opinion that on Marange, the national interest was lost completely. One of the criminals who was brought to Marange is called Iman Ahmad, a Lebanese national. In 2009, I went to Manica, Villa di Manica, across the border. There were over 60 that we could count, foreign nationals who were descended on Manica to buy diamonds from Marange. One of the people who was the most prominent diamond dealers in Mozambique was Imad Ahmad. This guy is a Lebanese national, domiciled in Dubai, and later on Mozambique. We saw him pretending like we wanted to sell diamonds. Some of you may have seen a document that we did in 2009 where we went in with a secret camera into Mozambique to investigate how our diamonds were being stolen. In 2009, Imad Ahmad came into this country. He registered 2 companies. One was called Pure Dam. The other one was called Sabi Gold Mine. Pure Dam is the company that entered into a partnership with Zimbabwe Mining Development Corporation to form what became known as the Diamond Mining Corporation, DMC. DMC was given a very, very lucrative concession in Marange. They produced some of the most precious diamonds this world has ever seen. Some of them are pink diamonds, which fetch very highly, even as high as $400 per carat. They are found at Pure Dam, DMC. This guy, Ahmad, he didn't start by mining in Zimbabwe. He started by illicitly buying diamonds from Minerals Marketing Corporation of Zimbabwe, MMCZ. And the diamonds were taken to Dubai. He opened the whole UAE diamond sector to Marange, this gentleman. 2009 going forward, we have several secretive UAE companies coming to buy diamonds from Marange through MMCZ. There is a newspaper article, the Zimbabwe Independent, 2009. I quote, Zimbabwe could have lost millions of dollars in a diamond sale after Minerals Marketing Corporation of Zimbabwe authorized the Sabi gold mine, and did note that this company had absolutely nothing to do with diamonds. It was registered to mine gold, to auction gems for a song. Documents in our possession show that Sabi sold gemstones weighing 31.5 kg, 157,968 carats, for US $3.50 per carat. And he realized $553,890. Ironically, other diamonds classified as near-gem diamonds on the MMCZ tender results show that the lowest price at the auction for low-quality stones was US $15.86. But in other jurisdictions, gemstones fetch more than $449 per carat. But in Zimbabwe, we sold our gems for $3.50 per carat. Mr. Chair, in 2013, in February, I went to India for a conference. I met an Indian jeweler who came to me when he heard that I'm a Zimbabwean. He said to me, I'm told that you come from Zimbabwe. I said, yes. And he said, I'm very glad to finally meet a Zimbabwean. And I knew the issue was venturing into diamonds. He said, tell me about Marange. What is happening there? How big is the field? I told him, and he said, I'm asking you because in 2012, my friend in Mumbai showed me a van that was full, literally full of diamonds from Zimbabwe. And he said, my friend told me that he bought the diamonds at $1 per carat. So he said to me, I want you to explain to me, how do you mine these diamonds? Do you just pick them from the ground? How do you recoup expenses? And what is your country getting out of this deal? Mr. Chairman, my heart bleeds. In 2009, this Ahmed bought diamonds from MMCZ worth $500,000 using a fake import license, which he claimed to have obtained from Atom DMCC. I'll speak about DMCC just shortly. In 2010, okay, first of all, why would MMCZ sell diamonds to a criminal? Why would MMCZ sell diamonds at $3.50 per carat? Don't we have experts in MMCZ who know the actual value of diamonds? There is no other explanation except to say MMCZ officials themselves benefited. The real trade of Zimbabwe's diamonds happens outside our borders. So they will recover the real value out of this country. So in 2010, that's when this Ahmed now formally moved into Zimbabwe, acquired a license. My concern then and now is this. The parliament of this country has never been involved in the identification of these investors. I would call them so-called investors because they are not. Had parliament been involved in interrogating, investigating who these people are, parliament was going to ask some hard questions. Show us your record of diamond mining. Where else have you mined? Parliament was going to do due diligence of the nature of these people. But Mr. Chair, one of the guys who had links with Sino Zimbabwe is a world-renowned criminal called Sempa, a Chinese guy who has got 8 passports with 8 different names. The last time we heard of Sempa, he was put under arrest, house arrest by President Xi in 2015, and we have never heard from him. He had a moving hotel in the sky, an airplane, which was well designed. It was like a moving hotel where deals were done in that aeroplane by Sempa. Mr. Chair, Sempa was a regular guest to Zimbabwe. Now, we come to the Minister of Mines. One of the things that I personally noted is that the Ministry of Mines itself was greatly compromised. Around 2013, the United Arab Emirates appointed the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Mines, Professor Francis Kujganga, to the board of Dubai Diamond Exchange, which is a subsidiary of Dubai Multi-Commodity Center, which is the equivalent of the Minerals Marketing Corporation of Zimbabwe, which was ironically chaired by the same Francis Kujganga. What it means, Mr. Chair, is that Professor Kujganga was a conflicted person who was serving the interests of 2 nations at the same time. No sooner had he been appointed to the board of DDE did Dr. Robert Mhlanga, the chairman of Mbada Diamonds, get appointed to the same board. Now, a few things about Dubai. Dubai is a tax haven. Dubai does not mine a single diamond. but it is a diamond trading hub. Every year, they buy diamonds, especially from conflict zones in Africa, and they simply re-export them, sometimes making 43.8% profit. Dubai has also appointed the diamond regulator of South Africa to the Dubai Diamond Exchange. So this was meant to compromise internal controls of African countries. And it's a shame that we allowed ourselves to be manipulated by another country. By the way, Dubai is one of the fastest growing countries in terms of the economy in the world. And I wonder what our officials see when they go to Dubai. But when I go to Dubai, I'm always challenged. How can we make Zimbabwe as great as we are seeing here? So, I'm almost done. Before Francis Kujiganga was appointed, there was something that was very interesting that had happened. There was a cabinet reshuffle in this country shortly before the appointment of Kujiganga. The then permanent secretary in the Ministry of Mines was Prince Mopazuriwo. He was appointed to the same board I'm talking about. A month later, there was a cabinet reshuffle and the secretaries were moved. The moment Prince Mopazuriwo was removed from the Zimbabwe's Ministry of Mines, he was dropped from the board of Dubai Diamond Exchange and replaced with Francis Kujiganga. That means they were targeting the institution and not the person. So, there's a point I just wanted to, I'm losing it here. Okay, so I'll come to the 15 billion claim. Is it credible? Lately, we have had a lot of debates. A revisionist school of thought has come on board saying, no. This is unverified. And I say to you, 15 billion could be an understatement. Zimbabwe could have lost in excess of 50 billion from Marange alone. Way back in 2008, the then Reserve Bank Governor, Gideon Gono, announcing that the army was going to intervene in Marange, he said, government is losing more than 1.2 billion a year to illegal partners. We are not talking about mining using equipment. We are talking about people who are using a hoe and a shovel. They could extract more than 1.2 billion. Now, was Gideon Gono daydreaming? I say no. He was speaking from knowledge. In 2007, the RBZ instructed the MMCZ to carry out what was called a mop-up operation in Marange, where they were purchasing diamonds from artisanal miners in the area. And many of them gave their diamonds to MMCZ because they were offering competitive prices. I believe it is at this time that Gono got this estimate as how much artisanal miners could produce. I saw a person in Marange who sold a single piece of diamond for 66,000 United States dollars back in 2009. But the official statistic or the official position of our government was that our diamonds are very poor quality. I disagree. Yes, compared with other jurisdictions, our diamonds may be of poor quality, but we also have a significant proportion of gem quality diamonds coming from Marange. But because of the mentality of undermining our very own nation, a narrative was designed to mislead the public that we are simply selling these diamonds, but we are not getting much. How did we know the actual value of Zimbabwe diamonds? It was in 2013, after the European Union lifted the sanctions on ZMDC and allowed Zimbabwe's diamonds to be traded in Belgium, in Antwerp. And then Belgium promised transparency. And when the diamonds were sold there, they fetched $79 per carat. This is now 2013. We are past the peak of mining in Marange. So if we were selling our diamonds at $40 per carat since 2009 up to 2013, Mr. Chair, we lost greatly to illicit financial flows. Then Minister Obed Mpofu in 2011, a day after the Kimberley process had lifted the ban on the exports from Zimbabwe, I quote him, "You cannot play against a giant. Without Zimbabwe, you can't have the KP. We are going to unleash our worthiness to the world. Zimbabwe won't be begging to anyone. Our current diamond production is estimated by volume to be in excess of 25% of the world production. And going by the values realized to date per carat, Zimbabwe is set to earn in excess of 2 billion annually." In conclusion, what do we need to do? I believe Zimbabwe can do something to recover its stolen wealth. The first thing we need to do is a forensic audit of exports, not income, but exports. Now that we know the value of our diamonds, we don't need someone to come and tell us that your diamonds are worth $40 per carat. We know. So we need to audit the exports. What did we export to which country? Since this is involving other nations, what remained in Zimbabwe is a drop in the ocean. What our ministers and our top officials stole is very insignificant when compared to what other nations robbed us of. Hence, there is a need even to approach the United Nations. Like what happened with the Democratic Republic of Congo, a commission of inquiry was set up on the looting of the DRC. And I believe Zimbabwe can still do that. Zimbabwe can take countries like India, China, UAE to the International Court of Arbitration and demand reparations for the looting of our diamonds. Finally, Zimbabwe must prosecute De Beers. De Beers plundered Marange from 1993 up to 2006. And as we may know, when government instituted an inquiry in 2011, all the documents in the Mineral Development Unit, something like that, they vanished, the De Beers documents, which shows they have a case to answer. Government needs to prosecute De Beers. They've shifted their headquarters from South Africa to London, but they can still be caught up with the long arm of the law. Once we produce enough evidence, it is also going to hurt their reputation as a company. If Zimbabwe clearly proved that De Beers acted unlawfully. I think these are my submissions regarding the observations we did on Marange. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, once again, for a diligent and informative presentation. Will members have your questions ready? Clarity may it's sought. I want to find out from you when when Mr. Mtisi, when the Minister of Mines then mentioned the 2 billion a year revenue. I also want to understand from you in terms of the joint ventures between government and the investors, agreements, why you say they are not there. Those will be my 2 questions, and then I'll then open it to the other members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Let me start with the joint venture agreements. The agreements may be resident with ZMDC or Marange Resources, but are not known in public. That is the point I was trying to make. But these are documents that are kept by the company or by the companies themselves, but are not availed publicly. And that is the reason why we call for contract transparency. If you look at DRC, for example, Liberia and other countries that are part of what is called the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, you would go to a website and then you will be able to click on a link to an agreement, a mining agreement, that will set out all the terms and conditions, or where you will see all the terms and conditions associated with a particular mining deal or a mining license. So it's about public disclosure, it's about making that kind of information available to the public. And in some cases, I've seen contracts that may include commercially sensitive information, but those particular pages where sensitive information will be blackened, kind of, or in gray, so that it's not visible. So that's the kind of approach that, as Zimbabwe, we should be looking at in terms of the new constitutional dispensation, which provides for transparency, accountability, financial probity, access to information, and all the relevant principles. So that's my response to that.
So just to follow up, have you tried to access those documents from any of the company or the thing ministry? Yes,
we wrote letters to MMCZ. That was in 2010. As Zela, we wrote letters to MMCZ. We were requesting for copies of the agreements, the Engine Agreement, the Zimbabwe Diamond Agreement, and we didn't get any response. We had given them about 7 days. Thereafter, we wrote to the administrative court to try and get the licenses, but we never got any response. We didn't go the route of litigation because we wanted at least to see if it is possible, without going to court, whether government would give you information. And there was no response even from Ministry of Mines. So that is a problem in Zimbabwe in terms of mining agreements. Then you also asked about the 2 billion. It has been repeated over time, or it was repeated over time by Minister Mpofu when he was addressing Kimberley process meetings from 2010, 2011, and 2012. we have been participating in Kimberley process meetings, and sometimes he will be addressing the media to say Zimbabwe has potential to earn about $2 billion from its diamonds.
Members of the committee, you are free to ask any questions that you may have. You had a question you wanted to ask. Go ahead.
I just wanted to find out, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to find out if any of the two gentlemen know a person by the name of Mark Maguwu or not.
Maybe just take a...
Yes,
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, personally, I know him, yes. He was former CEO of Marange Resources.
Follow-up to the reason I'm asking is that had you had any interactions with Mr. Mark Maguwu when you were doing your research? Have you spoken to him, and how well do you know him?
With Mr. Mabundo, we would meet at Kimberley process meetings. Because when you are in a meeting, you tend to engage different people. And during those meetings, we would talk about the situation in Marange. And I would also ask him how is the situation. And then sometimes we would even say, from a civil society perspective, these are issues of concern. And I remember at one point he attended one of our meetings. I can't remember if it was in Mutare or in Harare. But this was on not on a constant basis, but just meeting at meetings and things like that. But nothing personal or long-term kind of relationship of exchanging views or aspects.
The reason I was asking this is I wanted to find out from you, how would you rate him in terms of a person who knows about the diamond mining sector, since you said you were looking at the Kimberley process meetings. He was the CEO of Marange Resources. And I wanted to find out, was he actually came to this committee, I wanted to find out from you whether, what would you rate him as a person in the diamond field? Would you rate him as a person who's very knowledgeable about diamonds? Would you rate him as a person that was a person that's honest or something like that? So that's basically what I wanted to know. Because based on his oral evidence that he has brought to this committee, I just want to try and find out a bit of his background, if you have known him. Thank you.
Yeah, from my interactions with him, limited to the way, he struck me as someone who has the experience in terms of knowledge of the diamond mining sector. Because if I remember well, he was talking about his experience, was it for De Beers? I can't remember whether it was De Beers or another company. And he struck me as someone who is honest and who is ready to at least make sure that the country benefits from the natural resources. But those are discussions that are based when you just meet someone maybe for 2 minutes, and then you observe that this person strikes you as someone who is honest and has the interest of the country at heart. That's my observation. He has struck me as someone with experience.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few questions. I wanted to find out in your, both of you in your presentation, you didn't mention ACR. Can you mention ACR maybe, for us to understand the deeper part of the whole Marange saga? And also, in your description, you only concentrated on one area. Mbada directors, who, the companies that partnered Mbada, how are they, what were they before when they moved into the diamond area? Then the partners, in West Africa, diamond partners are a legal entity. Can you assist this committee so that we legalize the diamond partners in Zimbabwe? What are your recommendations? How do you want this done? Because other countries, there was the last time when we had that priest, he prayed the whole night, the following morning, he got a piece of diamond which is being now auctioned for over $400 million. And those special diamonds in Zimbabwe mining industry, they have never come up. We have never had a situation where there is a special diamond discovered in Marange. Who is taking all those special diamonds from your investigations? Because it's a natural thing. Even Swaziland has got the smallest diamond operations. But recently they picked a small diamond, and which is now going to change the face of Swaziland. In your investigations, who has been picking all these special diamonds, and how have they been exported? Then the last one, you said ZCDC is a private company. How do you know it's a private company? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I might have missed on one or two things since I'd gone out. But my question is based on the statistics that they are providing. If the minister was boasting of 2 billion capacity of production every year, then there is this irony of the 15 billion missing. Now, during the period that we've been mining, could 15 billion have disappeared if we had the capacity of 2 billion a year? Then secondly, the review, we didn't talk about the peer review mechanism that was proposed by the KPC, the Kimberley Processing Certification System. How is it still there? How is it? How can it assist in such a situation? And lastly, Mr. Chairman, if De Beers blundered and we wish to sue them and the records disappeared, how else can we get the relevant information to beef up the disappeared records?
Honorable Tatus, the Honorable Msayami, then you can respond.
Thank you, Chair. Now, Mr. Shamiso, there is so much allegations against all the diamonds in Zimbabwe. Why no one could stop those allegations and put stop to it? Everybody was pinching the diamonds. Why nobody could stop to that? And why also you allowed the beers to come to the country, do what they want to do, you allow them to go. With the beers, they went down to Orapa in Botswana, and Orapa, from a poor country, became a rich country in 15, 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question to the fellow colleagues, one is to do with is pressure groups. You do researches and you do workshops, you meet the people in the communities, you do all sorts of things. With regard to the Honorable Minister, then Honorable Minister Mpofu, have you done any research as to who he was before he became the Minister of Mines? Like, I remember then he was probably a governor of some sort, and he became a minister. Then who he was when he left the Ministry of Mines, what had happened to him in terms of accruing or had he become so poor? What happened? If ever you did that research, can you avail details to this House? Then my second question is to do with some residents in Mutare, especially in the plush suburbs of Murambi Gardens, Murambi suburb, Morningside, Greenside, as pressure groups. Have you done research as to, are there individuals there who are well-known buyers of diamonds? If ever they are there, what is it that you recommend to this Committee of Parliament, and what is it that you recommend to the government? And most probably, in conclusion to that, how do you see them in terms of what they are accruing? Is it benefiting the country, and how is it benefiting? And if not, where are they putting those diamonds? Thank you.
May you respond to those questions accordingly. I think you know which one belongs to which representative.
Okay. Maybe I will touch on the issue of partners, then the DPS, and the Mutare, which Honorable Chairman has asked it. Partners, to me, they are heroes. They represent the best that we know of Marange diamonds. When Marange diamonds were being mined by artisanal miners between 2006 and 2008, the whole nation felt the power of diamonds. I'm not saying everything was rosy. I understand there were some social challenges which came with diamonds, but the economy benefited. And the counter question is, if the mining corporations in Marange is what the doctor ordered for our economy, why is it we don't have cash in our banks? Why is it that these companies, they bank their money outside the country, not in this country? So we began to have this liquidity crisis when the companies were still there in Marange. And we don't know where the money went. So the artisanal miners must be legalized. There is actually an instrument to which Zimbabwe is party to. There's what is called the Washington Declaration on Artisanal Alluvial Production of 2012. This was made in Washington, D.C., and Honorable Mpofu was there. They agreed that countries where there is alluvial diamonds need to put in place a legal framework to regularize their operations. This is after the realization that whenever alluvial diamonds are found, it is almost impossible to stop artisanal miners from going there. And this is why we have unending cases of killings, torture that is taking place, especially in a country where unemployment is over 90%. Who can stop those young men and women from going to dig when they know that I can strike it rich? Then on De Beers, if the records vanished, how can we prosecute? I think we can prosecute. What is simply needed is an investigation. We still have people who worked for De Beers, who knows what happened, who can give even oral evidence. I'm not a legal expert, but I think somehow a case can be built against the De Beers. Then, in terms of the diamond dealing syndicates in Mutare, Honorable Mtseme, this is a serious concern. As we speak right now, I think we have over 60 houses in Mutare which have been converted into diamond buying centers. And as you rightfully put it, it starts with the Greenside, Morningside, Palmerston, Murambi, Darlington. Some of them have actually put security cameras outside to tell who is coming. I would not have much of a problem if this were Zimbabwean. My worry is that there are scores of foreign nationals who are living in Mutare to get our diamonds and siphon them out of the country. So I think Parliament needs an investigation and then take appropriate action. The other thing, Mr. Chair, is that we have refugees who, according to the records of this government, are living in Chipinge, but they are not there. They are in Mutare, buying diamonds and selling them. So there is a need to investigate all the refugees who are supposed to be in Chipinge, and yet they are big diamond dealers. And the Kimberley process will also have an interest in this, in that all these diamonds are leaving the country without KP certificates. Thank you.
Let me respond to the remaining questions. Here and there I might add as well. On the directors of Mbada Diamonds, as an organization, we have never carried out a research on who David Castle is or was. We didn't do that. In terms of the artisanal and small-scale miners, my colleague has already talked about. We also undertook some review visits to Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, and other countries in West Africa, and realized that those countries actually have legislation that regulates artisanal miners. And the law actually classifies, in fact, it has 3 categories of licenses. There is Class C, which is reserved for the artisanal miners. And most of them have to be, if it is in Liberia, they have to be Liberians. So that is important to point out, that this country has got, Liberia has got legislation. But in Zimbabwe, what I have noticed recently is, if you read through the finance bill, the 2018 one, there's actually reference to artisanal miners. That sector is reserved for local Zimbabweans. But there's no law to clearly regulate that sector. So it's something that, as members of parliament, you should be looking at. And what we've been pushing for is regularization and formalization of artisanal miners. Because you find that whether it's in the diamond mining sector or gold sector, Fidelity Printers is buying from artisanal miners. It's buying gold from artisanal miners. Yet, who do not have licenses, contrary to the Mines and Minerals Act. So it's important to synergize there and harmonize the law. Because the Gold Trade Act, for example, criminalizes possession of gold without a license. Yet we are encouraging them to produce and we buy. So it's something that we should look at and reform. Who has been picking special diamonds? We have not done a particular, as Zella, we have not done a particular research on this one to see who exactly has been picking the good diamonds, maybe in terms of color, clarity, and other attributes of a diamond. But of course, we often hear people saying, because of speculation and lack of transparency and accountability, that at this particular mine, DMC, for example, there was a storeroom or a certain box for the special diamonds. It's people speculating because people are not provided with adequate information to know what exactly is happening in the diamond mining sector. But it's something that we have not investigated to find out if it is true or not. Then ZCDC, why we are saying it's a private company. If you allow me, let me just give you the reason why we are saying that. we did a research at the company registry and noted that in 2015, when ZCDC was registered, it was registered as a private company in terms of the Companies Act, and its registered address was number 90 Mtare Road, which is the ZMDC premises, and that Professor Gujganga, David Edika, Huva Murangari were listed as directors. Then there was Betam Zangadis, who was listed as secretary. So that was 2015, as a private company. Then come June 2017, a perusal of the register of members at ZCDC, we did a perusal of the registered members at ZCDC, indicated that the shares were transferred from those individuals to others, and that made ZMDC a shareholder of the company. That was June 2017. So the authorized share capital, for example, of ZCDC is stated as $2,000, divided into 2,000 ordinary shares of $1 each. So the directorship of the company had actually evolved. Mr. Gujganga and Mr. Murangari resigned. So there were new directors. And these were Miracle Musha, Alexander Mkokwezeke, Isau Joseph Chiadzwa, and Slava Grace Chela. Those were appointed around June 2017. And that is what is reviewed at ZMDC. I'm not sure if that situation or that position has changed or not. But from the records that we looked at, ZCDC was registered as a private company. It might have changed, but we know now ZMDC now is the shareholder. In terms of the peer review system, how it can help Zimbabwe, the Kimberley process has a system of monitoring whether countries are complying with the Kimberley process minimum requirements that I read out. And that system is what we call the peer review system. So the peer review system consists of three main aspects. Firstly, if there are special circumstances in a particular country, the Kimberley process can institute what is called a review mission. A review mission is meant to tackle or monitor extraordinary situations like what happened in Zimbabwe when we had human rights violations and cases of smuggling. So a review mission can be sent in there. This can be done anytime. There's no particular schedule, so long there's a crisis. Like what is happening in Central African Republic, a review mission was sent there by the Kimberley process. Then the second component is what we call the Kimberley process review visit. The review visits are actually organized after every 3 years. Each country is supposed to undergo a review visit, which is basically a constant reminder that you need as a country to continue complying with the KP. We want to assess whether you are still compliant or not. So after every 3 years. So each country has to invite a review visit. So what we have seen is Zimbabwe, after 2012, when it was last certified as compliant, it did not invite any review visit. So we have been saying there's need for Zimbabwe to invite a review visit so that the Kimberley process can assess whether Zimbabwe is still compliant because of the changes in Marange, changes that were necessitated by the consolidation of diamond mining companies. We no longer have Anjin operating there. We no longer have Bada operating there, although there could be some activities at Anjin and that kind of thing. We no longer have DMC. Yet the last review visit by the Kimberley process and the monitoring by the KP monitor was based on what we call a mine-to-mine compliance. So it means if we now have ZCDC mining, it should be subjected to the same review visit. So we are saying government should invite the KP to look at whether it is still compliant with KP minimum requirements or not. After I have read the minimum requirements And after the presentation I did, and what Farai has also presented, my belief is that Zimbabwe should carry out a review visit, should invite a review visit, because there are areas where we see non-compliance with KP minimum requirements. So that is very important. Whether it's smuggling, whether it's lack of a comprehensive legal framework, whether it's bank transactions related to the diamond mining sector, and other aspects that are key for the Kimberley process. Honorable Aristoteles, I didn't get the question exactly when you talked about Orapa mine in Botswana and the beers.
Yeah, you said the beers, they came and spent a lot of time in Zimbabwe, they did a lot of exploration work, and why they left without doing anything good to the country, like they did in Botswana or Orapa. What was the reason? Not
I'm sure
enough diamonds,
Okay.
or too much, or they pinched too much and they left.
Okay.
Yeah, my colleague can respond.
The beers, Honorable, I thought the beers were not here to mine, they were exploring, so it's, for them to really build anything was nothing. I think, like they said, they actually took out more when they were really supposed to really mine in the end. But the exploration was for too long, and as a result, you then want to question that exploration, that was an exploration to loot or to really explore.
But there's also a difference between Botswana diamonds and the Marange diamonds. Botswana diamonds are kimberlitic diamonds, and it's very difficult even to extract in Botswana. One has to do things really professionally. Whereas in Marange, it was very easy. These are alluvial diamonds. The extraction, the processing took place actually at night, and that was very possible given the nature of our diamonds here. I think that difference could have contributed to the success story of Botswana and the failure in Zimbabwe.
There was also a question on former Minister of Mines, Obed Mpofu, in terms of whether we have done any particular research. As Zela, we have not done any particular research on Mpofu. But what we also do, just like the general public, is to read in papers as well, that he bought this bank, owns this company, and that farm, and such kind of things. And those kind of transactions appeared to have happened when he was Minister of Mines. So in the mind of many people, people would start questioning, how did he get that kind of wealth? Given also the fact that there were allegations, and I'm sure there were court cases between him and Kurotwi in terms of demanding bribes and that kind of thing. So those are things that we also read in the papers, not that we have engaged in any particular research. But of course we met with him as civil society when we were at Kimberley process meetings, and he would say, you guys, why are you working against the economic interests of the country? Why are you talking about human rights? Why are you talking about transparency and accountability when you know that we are under sanctions? If you see a lion chasing you, you need to, can you just slow down? Or as a country, you have to hide the way you do business. Those were the kind of things that we were alive to in terms of his operations. But we would know that during Kimberley process meetings, he would come with huge delegations of people from different state entities, others parallel civil society groups that were formed for purposes of disturbing the Kimberley process meetings. And this actually caused a lot of uneasiness and insecurity even to us as civil society groups. So there were those developments when we were, when he was still minister and when he was attending Kimberley process civil society, Kimberley process meetings rather.
Then there was a question on the 15 billion claim that former President Mugabe said we lost 15 billion, and then Mpofu said we are losing about, I mean, we can earn about 2 billion annually. So how do we make sense out of it? I think the 2 billion claim started in 2009 in Namibia, when Honorable Mpofu attended the KP intersessional. That's when he started talking about 2 billion. Then we had only 2 mines, 2 firms in Marange then. That was Sino Zimbabwe and Mbada Diamonds. 2009, that's when new entries later started coming, 2010. 2012, we had a massive production. I think that was the peak of diamond mining in Marange. If I'm not mistaken, we should have produced more than 12 million carats. Is that so, Shamiso? Yeah.
Almost 8, I think.
8 million?
Yeah.
Okay. 8 million carats. And if we put that at the actual value as Belgium revealed to us, I think the number, the amount that we could have earned goes into several billions. I don't have a calculator here, but you can simply multiply 8 million carats times, say, $78 per carat. I'm sure the amount goes into billions. But even if we are looking at 2 billion annually from 2009, President Mugabe said this in 2016. So that was about 7 years later, after 2009. And if you say 2 billion multiplied by 7, it's around 14 billion. So I think somehow he was working on what had been presented to him by the minister.
Hold on. You had a question. I think that was the last question.
I just wanted some clarity. And the clarity was, you mentioned the Chinese national and the Lebanese national. What made you do a research on them? Had you been hinted about them before or not? And then you mentioned that the Chinese national has an aircraft which is an office in the air. And you also mentioned the Indian talking about a van full of diamonds. Are these stories, facts, or are they just from hearsay, a story? Or did you actually see the aircraft? The person that told you, did he actually have facts to it? Thank you.
Just supplement on that, is that did you share this information with the police or the ministry?
Okay, thank you. On Sempa and Ikmat, what made us to develop a lot of interest in them? First of all, as I said, in 2010, we did an investigation on where our diamonds are going. And that investigation took us to Manica in Mozambique, where we first saw Ikmat. Then in March 2012, after a protracted struggle, government finally allowed civil society to tour Marange. When we went to DMC, we were shocked to find Ikmat there as the CEO of Diamond Mining Corporation. We were also surprised to realize that whilst it was a joint venture between the ZMDC and Pure Diamond, the positions reserved for the Zimbabweans were vacant, and yet mining was taking place. And we asked it, how is it that this is a joint venture and it's only the Lebanese who are here? How does the Zimbabwe government ensure that it is not being prejudiced? And Ihmad said, that's not really my jurisdiction to answer you. For us, we agreed and we are doing things according to our agreement. And that kept me interested to know more about this guy. About Sempa, I've never met him. Sempa came to light through investigations done by a South African-based journalist, investigative journalist called Khadija Sharifi. And the report that she produced was very credible in that she even wrote all the people involved in that report to respond, though Sempa refused to respond. There was even the airline, the aircraft number of that flight, which used to land at Harare International Airport and the Lanseria Airport in Johannesburg. So that is the closest we got to know this mysterious character called Sempa. Then on the Indian guy, I think I made it very clear that I was told by someone that I met in India who told me about what he had seen with his own eyes, but I wasn't there when he saw that. But given the level of secrecy and the corruption that was taking place at home, I had no reason to doubt what he told me. On the police, yes, we have informed the police about, and until now, we continue to inform them. Only yesterday, I met one of the police officers in Mutare, trying to highlight to him the issues which Honorable Mtseami raised earlier on concerning the illicit trade that is taking place in some of our suburbs. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mtisi keeps on mentioning and repeating that government must invite a review mechanism. If government is operating, if government is not operating above board in Marange, how easy do you think it can invite that review mechanism? Obviously, it's going to disqualify us from KPZ. Now, if that is the case now, how else can we enforce that the review mechanism is brought on board if government is reluctant to invite it?
Thank you very much. That's a very good question. So, I indicated that there are what are called review missions. Review missions are initiated by the Kimberley process itself, by a decision based on consensus to say there's a problem in Zimbabwe, and the KP should, on its own, initiate investigations. So that's one process that can be implemented, which means it will be a review mission rather than waiting for the government to invite. So the KP should also be proactive. Now, the question could be, how can the issue be raised within the Kimberley process? The Kimberley process is made up of 3 pillars: civil society, government, and industry. In many cases where review missions, review visits, and other problem areas have been tackled by the KP, it is civil society that would have highlighted the problems in a particular country. such that if there are reports from civil society to indicate that there's lack of compliance and compelling cases of lack of compliance with KP minimum requirements, then the KP should be able to do it. And it does this through what is called the working group on monitoring. So what it also means is civil society should be able to raise that issue within the Kimberley process. This is something that we wrote about, and this is something that we will be sharing with the Kimberley process in the coming months. The European Union is now the chair of the Kimberley process, but there's a working group on monitoring which will be responsible for that. But also, in light of the new dispensation and also the new constitutional principles, it will be good for government to demonstrate to investors that Zimbabwe is open for business. And diamonds, it's about trade, because the Kimberley process is about trade of diamonds. So if government is not open about its trade related aspects in the diamond mining sector, it means it's not open for business. So what this implies to me is that there is need for government to open for scrutiny by the Kimberley process so that its systems are foolproof. And in any case, in 2012, there were very good systems that were set up by Bada Diamonds, by Anjin and other companies in terms of security provision. So the question is whether those systems are still intact. They are not. So it means we need to make sure that government puts in place those systems. Those systems were set up as a result of a joint work plan between the Kimberley process and government of Zimbabwe. Government of Zimbabwe had realized, although we were pushing, that it had problems. And now we should again acknowledge that there are problems in Marange and be able to invite a KP review visit.
Mr. Chair, I realize there's a question that was overlooked on ACR in Bada. The African Consolidated Resources, ACR, was given the tender for Marange in 2006, immediately after the BS had withdrawn. And they oversaw the beginning of artisanal mining in Marange. That when they started in April 2006, they didn't start by mining, they simply started by bringing the equipment and securing the concession. Then ex-DBS employees came back about April 2006. And they began to tell the locals that, can you pick a stone like this? And when we come back, they would come every fortnight to buy the stones. The locals gathered the stones without knowing that these are diamonds. So the DBS staff would come 2 weeks and collect and go and come back again. Later, mid-2006, that's when the locals began to realize that these stones are valuable. I left Zimbabwe briefly in 2006, September, when the number was going up of artisanal miners. When I came back in December, I think over 40% of the households in Mutare had at least a cup full of diamonds. I witnessed them. So the value was beginning to be realized that these are diamonds. Then that's when government now rescinded the decision to award ACR the concession. Not that ACR was going to be a savior. They were equally criminals. We did not need a foreign investor to mine artisanal diamonds in Zimbabwe. This is what local people could do. Then around August 2006, I'm sorry I don't have my notes here, but around there, a government delegation went to Marange. I think there were about 3 ministers who went there. Then the guy, the security officer retired Lieutenant Colonel Matsacha of ACR, who was stationed in Marange to secure the property of ACR. When he saw the ministers coming, he then called the artisanal miners to come and be addressed by the ministers. So he told the ministers that, I'm having problems with these people. They are invading our premises. To his surprise, the ministers actually told the artisanal miners that these are your diamonds. Continue mining. A few months later, that's when they returned at gunpoint. They were told to leave immediately. And they left to go and spend the night in Mutare, those who came from Harare and other parts of the country. That's when the ACR debacle began. On and on, they won some high court orders to be returned to Marange, but it didn't work until 2009 when the new companies came on board. Mbada Diamonds, it's a partnership with a South African company called New Reclam, or New Reclamation Group. Typical of a kind of a criminal syndicate. New Reclam went to Mauritius where they registered Grandwell Holdings as a subsidiary. It is that Grandwell Holdings which then formed the partnership with ZCDC to form Mbada Diamonds.
Okay, I want to thank you for appearing before us. And the members of the Parliament don't take this lightly. I think this information certainly helps us in getting to the real issue, bringing closure to this diamond issue. I think members of Parliament will certainly use this information to advance the whole cause, representing the people and from the point of oversight, getting everyone to account for what we believe is ours in terms of resource. I want to thank you, and hopefully you equally be part of the gallery on Monday to also listen to the Minister from the Minister of Mines present his issues. I'm sure the thing notes that you take will also assist. You can be the thing advisor to the chairman, and so that we still guided. But anyway, thanks so much for coming here. Members of the press, yes, we're supposed to have ZPC here and the State Procurement Board, but we've moved it to the 12th of March because they had other engagements that they had. The committee got resolved to have the Chief Secretary to the President Cabinet here and the former Minister Mavere here, as well as the Deputy Chief Secretary to the President Cabinet, Dr. Ngikuba, as a result of the oral evidence that we received from Mr. Mtisi Farai. I thank you. Members, if we just hold on while they excused a few issues.